I don't know if anybody else can still hear it, but I can't, so we're going to start. Welcome back. I hope everybody got a good rest and a warm shower, or at least a shower.
I hope they do too.
Yeah. I was really moved by that panel. Thank you guys. Thank you for opening your heart. Yeah. That was just what I needed. So we've talked, somehow we managed 2/3 of the 4-step into an hour, which I didn't think we were going to get. In this next hour, we're going to try to finish up 4 and talk about 5, 6, and 7, and keep moving forward with our agenda. But so we finished off with this fear inventory, and I think we kind of glazed over it. Scott was racing as fast as he could. Like we prayed down our resentment list, which I think is the most powerful part of that resentment work. It's not just, the columns are great, some good observations happen. The transformation is in the prayer. And I think that's true with the fears. My observations is that the fears are pretty much the same with everybody. We all have the same variation of about 7. I'm not good enough. I'm afraid I'm going to fail. I'm afraid I'm going to succeed. I'm afraid she's going to leave me. I'm afraid she's going to stay. They can coexist. It's true. That type of stuff. And just an observation. When I brought that to my sponsor, what I thought was fear of success really wasn't fear of success. What I was afraid of is that I was going to have some moments of success. I'm talking about in the work world, and they were going to expect a repeat of that. And I knew whatever success I had was probably pretty fraudulent, and they probably didn't know the whole picture. And so my ability to, fake it again, was not strong. And so I really didn't have a fear of success. I don't think any of us do. But it's that prayer work of praying down. And I, jumping into 5, when a guy is struggling telling me his story in the 5th step, sometimes I'll just jump to our fear list. I'm not going too far into 5, but that's something I like to do. This sex inventory is a game changer for me. It gives me it helps me identify the guidepost that I'm going to move forward. I'm going to shoot for, I should say. This is not an inventory to beat ourselves up. This is not a shame event. This is just about looking at what didn't work and how do we want to live our life going forward. So open up our books, conveniently on page 69. Bottom of 68. Now about sex, many of us need an overhauling there, but we try to be sensible on this question. It's easy to get way off track. Talks about opinions to the extremes, and people cry for sex, more sex, less sex. In 69 is where the money happens. So that first full paragraph starts with, we reviewed our own conduct over the years past. And Bill has this habit of kind of telling us this is what we're going to vaguely do, and then giving us specific instructions on how to do that. And these next 4 questions are how we do that. We reviewed our conduct over the years past. Sounds like a good idea. Not so much. Here they are. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where are we at fault? We got this all down on paper. Where are we at fault? We got this all. Where were we at fault? What should we have done? As you notice, I can't even say that out loud. It's so painful to think about. What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. And I've heard lots of great ways of doing that. You can break those questions into 6 or 8 or 12 variations. They're basically 4 question marks. And so since the 4-column inventory worked so well for resentments, let's just try that. If your sponsor had you do it a different way, awesome. I do not care. What I care about is that you ask yourself honestly these questions. And, by the way, got it down on paper. And I think that doing it in a 4-column inventory way allows me to be kind of succinct about it, not overdoing it, not flogging myself to death for my poor behavior. And so, for me, the first in the first column, so we make these 4 columns. The first column is the who, right? Whom would we hurt? And in this column, we don't have to skip a line. We just number down the page, and it's every person, internet, computer, Corvette, Billy Goat that we've ever had sex with. Write them down on this in this column. Sorry, Barclay, I didn't mean to share that about your fifth step. And we are in Tennessee, so just everybody. And so it's not an admission list. We're going to put these people through this inventory process, and this, because a lot of times I hear people say, "Well, I didn't really hurt her." Okay, well, let's put her down on the list. Just put her in column 1, and let's answer the questions about it, and let's see if that's true. So that's the easy question: whom would we hurt? And if we're not sure, we put it down. The next column is where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate. And I just write those in the top of column 2, those 3 words: selfish, inconsiderate, and dishonest. Multiple choice. Go down the list. In the third column, did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? And so that top of that third column, I just write jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness, and that's a pretty easy answer for a lot of us. And this where were we at fault, what should we have done instead, can go a lot of directions, and kind of like in the resentment inventory where we limit that to 19 words or less, we're keeping that theme. We're not going to go on some crazy tangent here. Well, on the Wednesday, that she told me, she was on birth control, and I, no. Scott gives, and I'm just going to share what he shared with me because we're talking about this part of the work, is a lot of that can be boiled down into 2 questions or kind of 2 ideas of what I could have done instead. And that is one is told her the truth. If I had told her the truth, it would have avoided the hurt that I made. Or I could have left her alone. That covers most of those errors. If I had told her, hey, listen, I'm really not interested in your well-being. I'm just really interested in using you for the next 3.5 minutes. She would have ran the other direction, right? But no, I lied to her and I told her I was interested and pretend whatever it is. You know what I mean? And one of the things that I think is so important about this inventory, it just gives me this new perspective by getting on paper. Like if and the other ones do as well, but for me, putting it on paper makes it reality. And the observations are powerful. But let's keep going. So we've got these 4 columns. We've written this all down. In the next paragraph, it says, in this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. In what way? And asking ourselves those questions. In this way, we try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. So we talk about following themes through the book, and I don't know a place where Bill mentions doing something so many times in such a short period of writing. Count these times. He tells us to write this ideal. In this way, we try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. 3 sentences down, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. That sounds like a prayer. Next paragraph. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. Next page, first full paragraph. Suppose we fall short of this chosen ideal and stumble. Next paragraph. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal. So I think we can all collectively agree we have to come up with a sex ideal. And what does that mean? What is an ideal? It's a set of principles that I want to try to live by that will avoid the disaster that's on the paper. Right? Because I don't know about you. That's well said. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to be said about that. I mean, it's just a train wreck what's on that paper. And why, and Bill does us the favor of telling us why we have to do this. So let's go back to the instruction here. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to the test, was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given, therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. And meditation, so this is, I just kind of popped out with me. Well, so not only does he tell us to pray about it, he tells us to meditate about it. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with others is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are fanatical about sex, as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. Suppose we fall short of this chosen ideal, are we going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half-truth. So if I violate this ideal, it's a half-truth, and it's a 50%. Half is 50%. It's a 50% chance I'm going to get drunk if I violate my sex ideal. The only way that it won't, he tells us here, it depends on us on our motives. If we're sorry and we have done for what we have done and we have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and learn our lesson. But here it is. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are the facts out of our experience. And then he tells us to pray about it again. Pray about it. Meditate. Pray about it. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder in the working with others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would be heartache. And so what my sponsor asked me to do is to, now this is outside the book. The book does not tell us to write this down, but he's clearly told us. Does anybody disagree? He's clearly told us to identify an ideal. Agreed? Well, my sponsor has accused me of having a short memory. I forget what I believe. And if I am faced, the weak is flesh, let me just put it to you that way. I can change my ideals pretty quickly when I'm faced with something I want. Not only can I do that, chances are I can, it's not an outside the box possibility. And so he asked me to write it down. Bill doesn't say write it down, but I wrote it. He asked me to write it down. He asked me to come up with 3 or 4 sentences that are basically the opposite of the train wreck on that paper. And I'm going to share with you what that looks like, what it sounds like. And it's changed a little bit. But my sex ideal is this. I want to be an honest, selfless lover to my wife. Sounds pretty good. And I want to give my wife all of my sexual attention and energy. If I can follow those 2 sentences, those 2 ideals, I can avoid everything that happened on that paper. Right? If I'm watching pornography, I'm not giving my wife all of my sexual attention. If I'm flirting with the girl at the boat dealership, trying to sell me a $120,000 boat, I'm not.
She just thinks you're very cute. That's what
Just got hot in here. So this is what the ideal does not sound like. I want my girlfriend to be 120 pounds, blonde, 25 years old, no kids, preferably a virgin, willing to do anything, and filthy rich, right? That is not a sex ideal, right? How are we going to live our life so we don't do what we did on that paper? Because if I do, knowingly, I'm going to get drunk. Somewhere in that reading, I think we skipped over that part about, we're not the arbiter of anyone's sex life. And that's true. That's true. And that's why we don't talk about some controversial issues in AA and, with people. But where I think sponsorship does play a role is, I think as a sponsor, we have a responsibility to tell our guys the truth. I've asked my sponsor to tell me the truth. And if I'm doing something outside the line spiritually, I want to be told, Not only does my sponsor have spiritual license to call me on my stuff, but the men in my life have spiritual license to call me on my stuff. And I hope you have a bunch of road dogs that have spiritual license to call you on your stuff. because it's really easy to kind of compartmentalize it with a sponsor. But, I think the greatest gift a sponsor has is transparency. Scott's my sponsor, has a wonderful knowledge of the book, great experiences in AA, and all that's wonderful. But it's the transparency. It's that part that connects us as human beings and makes me think, that makes me know that I'm okay, and that I can get past this, I can get through this. That's invaluable. And I think and I share that. I've shared my deal with all the men that I sponsor when we do our fifth steps. That's something we do, and he told me to write it down. And if it changes, that's fine. We can change it, and hopefully it changes in a way that gets us closer to God. But to share it with him, and I think it's one of the strongest practices we do. I mean, Bill tells us 5 times in that framework to do it. You want to jump in, Scott? Okay.
Hey guys, I'm Barclay. I'm an alcoholic. I want to reiterate that idea of having guys in your life that you have spiritual transparency with them. And there's I can't think of the phrase, but it is license and spiritual consent, spiritual consent. Not only, I mean, like, hey, I need to talk to you about something. They have it with me, and I have it with them. I got a number of guys in my life that know all my crap. You've gone over the sex thing really well. There's a few things that I.
What'd you say?
Never mind. I just got divorced 10 years ago, right? And so my sexual ideal has changed since I was married. When I was married, my wife got all of my sexual energy, all of that, right? And today, my sexual ideal is that, and when I first got divorced, it was like, oh, I'm gonna try some things, man. I was like, I tried dating 2 women at one time. I'm just not good at it. If you can date 8 women at the same time, God bless you. I can barely. I need to date 1 woman at a time, and that 1 woman needs to get all of my sexual energy, right? All of my sexual energy. And here's something that I do and that I'm not proud of, and somebody called me out on it one time, is I'm a huge flirt. I like flirting with women. And what the reason I do, and this is the word that somebody used with me one time that made me go, dang, I hate that. It's intoxicating. When you're flirting with a woman and she's flirting back and hey, it's working, that's completely intoxicating. And I'm trying to stay away from intoxication. That is one of the bigger ongoing, I don't want to call it harms that I did with my ex-wife, is I flirted all the time. And she would say, you're flirting. I go, oh, no, I'm not. I'm just playing around. I was flirting, man. I was getting a hit off of stuff. That's me. That's just me. That's my sexual ideal. Transparency with guys. Honest to goodness, I know Scott's gonna get all sexy, so I'm gonna let you talk, okay?
I'm 81 years old. You don't need to buckle up your chin strap. It ain't gonna be that. Ain't gonna be that hot. Just to echo a couple of things that these guys have said rather inadequately. I asked one of my great mentors this thing about not being an arbiter of anyone's sex conduct, and he said, if I see somebody close to me doing anything that I think is taking them toward a drink instead of away, I have to tell them. That's pretty clear. And it says we'd hardly be human if we didn't have sex problems. What can we do about them? That's what we're here for, not to beat ourselves up. I love the way John laid out the columns. That's how I do it. I'm about to share some things with you for the simple reason that if I don't, somebody here might die. My fourth column has 3 entries. So the 2 he mentioned, that I should have told her the truth, or I should have left her alone. The third one is I should have told him no. I am a heterosexual male. There's no question about it. I had my first homosexual experience when I was 12. My last one when I was about 19. I never liked it. And the best analysis I can do is I've been so beaten down by my father that I couldn't tell anybody no for any reason. Do you notice that my demeanor has not changed when I shared that with you? We talk about a new freedom. That is now simply a fact in my past. I've been emotionally disconnected from that. So if that's the one you got that's killing you and you hadn't been able to tell anybody, catch me. I'll be glad to chat with you. I've sponsored a number of gay men, and their big one was they tried to have heterosexual experiences, and it twisted them up. I get it. I get it completely. And I think that's really important. So we're trying to, a sane and sound ideal. And I asked the guys I sponsored to write it down and read it to me. And if I think it's inbound spiritually, I say so. If I think it's not, I say so. It's that simple. And I got a call. I'm not making it. It's going to sound like a joke. I'm not making this up. A guy I sponsored called me in. A new guy he sponsored. His sex ideal was going to be he was going to continue to sleep with the 2 married women in his neighborhood and hope his wife didn't find out. That's where we started. That's not where we ended up, but that's where we started. It's easy to get into that. You guys covered that pretty well. This last paragraph on page 70 is what we pilots call a checklist. If we've been thorough about our personal inventory, we've written down a lot. If you've written down everything we've talked about so far, that's a lot. We listed and analyzed our resentments. Yeah, we covered that. We understand we comprehend their futility and their fatality. Yeah, we killed me 7 times on 1 page. Commenced to see terrible destructiveness. Yep, we did that. Begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies. So we look on them as sick people. Yeah, we covered that. Listed the people we have hurt by our conduct are willing to straighten out the past if we can. We did that twice. Once at the bottom of the inventory and once on the page before. So that's it. I do not allow the guy I sponsor schedule step 5 until he's completed 4. I will not let him bash himself into finishing the 4th step because he's got 5 scheduled. It's a bad mindset. And there's so much that could be covered on this. But it talks about the actor again. I'm on page 73. And we're talking about me being the actor, and psychologists and other doctors have very little hope for people like us. And it's a friend of mine says he thinks alcoholics shouldn't go to MDs. We should go to veterinarians. Because the vet's used to trying to guess what's wrong with his patient. The patient ain't telling him. Right? We ain't telling him either. Sponsor guy said he paid a psychiatrist hundreds of dollars to lie to him. It makes perfect sense to me. So I think most of us know that there are no rules in AA. The first one is listed here on page 74. The last sentence, the last paragraph ends with notwithstanding, count up 3 lines. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves but always considerate of others. This has to do with who's going to hear your 5th step. And you got to remember, this was written before there were sponsors on every corner. The man I sponsor do their 5th step with anybody they need to, and me. And if he can't do his 5th step with me, we're finished now. It's just that simple. There are a couple of reasons. One, I want him to have the confidence. 2, I think it's important that someone who's done this be there. And 3, I'm going to hear things on his 5th step need to be on 8 that he's going to miss. That's why I do that. It's not a control thing. Just for fun, the next rule we don't have is on 101.
That was really smart what you just said.
What, I did something smart?
Yes.
Wow.
I've heard it.
Couldn't we get a picture of that? It's okay. 2/3 of the way down the page. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there's drinking if we have a legitimate reason to be there. Goes on to say if your spiritual condition is in real good shape and so on. And then the other rule we don't have is on 118. Paragraph begins with your husband. You skip down 5 or 6 lines. Live and let live is the rule. And my 3rd sponsor turned that around and said, let live and live. If I got a rope on you holding you in line and you jump out, you pull me with you. So that one plays both ways. For me, the serenity prayer does the same thing. God grant me the acceptance to be serene about the things I cannot change. This live and let live thing plays both ways also. There are a number of ways to approach step 5. I'm simply sharing with you what I do. There is a fairly large group, and I know some people I have utmost respect for, that believe step 5 is read me your 4-step. I don't do that, and I don't understand it. If I've gone through the resentment inventory and prayed the prayers, that stuff's already gone. What's reading that going to accomplish? I've gone the fear thing, and I'm praying and I'm outgrowing the fears. Why am I going to cover that? We've done the sexual misconduct inventory. I'm willing to make amends, and I'm growing toward a new ideal. Why are we reading that? It says here on 75 in the second paragraph, we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. It's a confession. And I've been doing it this way about 35 years, I guess. So we schedule it. We got a place, we got a bathroom, we got water, we got tissue, we got big books, we got his 4-step. And I say, are you nervous? This is his first one. Are you nervous? If he says no, I say, we're wasting our time because you've already decided what you ain't going to tell me. I want him nervous at the first one. After that, probably not. But the first one, he needs to be nervous. Because if he's nervous, he's either decided to tell me or he's not sure. I'll get it out of him. And then we're going to pray. I'm going to ask him to ask God to give him an open heart and an open mind and the courage to say it. And I will ask God to make me perfect. The book says I can do that on page 13. And I think it's one of the most powerful lines in the entire book, about 8 lines from the bottom. 13. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore my usefulness to others. Then what I might expect to receive, that would be in great measure. And in that prayer, I ask God to make me perfect for this time. Not for me, for him. And I tell God also that if I get the sense of a guidance of some kind, I'm going to follow it. And I do. And so we come out of the prayer, and I say to him, tell me now the single worst thing you ever did. I want it right now. And you have to have them sitting down because they're going to back up about 3 steps if they're standing. And he tells me. And then I tell him when I did that. Then I ask him, what's the second worst thing you ever did? And he tells me, and I tell him when I did that. And we're going to do that till he runs out. I've only had one in the last decade that had a number 1 that I hadn't done. And I'm going to share with you, if you've done what I'm about to talk about and you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I'm not here to indict you. Once again, somebody can die if I don't do this. My worst one was as a young man, I paid for an abortion. As far as I'm concerned, I killed one of my own children. And that weighed heavily on me for an extremely long period of time. I was shown in step 9 how to make amends to that unborn child. Once again, note my demeanor did not change when I shared that with you. That's the heaviest thing, and I drank over it and smoked dope over it for decades. And today, I'm disconnected emotionally through this process, this astonishing process. So I'm going to do that with him until he can't think of one. And then we're going to consult his 4-step. We're going to ask him to take a look at the 4th column, the resentment inventory. Did we miss anything? Just sort of glance through it. Talk about the fears. Look at the sexual misconduct. And then I read him the 5th step promises, which are the rest of that paragraph on 75. And I read him the next paragraph. It gives him direction to what to do for the second half of step 5. I've been doing it this way for about 35 years, I guess. And the longest 5th step I've had since I started doing it, so it's about 2 hours and 20 minutes. They rarely cross 2 hours. Rarely. If you do it the other way and sit down and just tell him to talk, you can be there for days. It can take him forever to get through stealing the candy bar out of the convenience store to the abortion or the homosexual experience, and those almost always number 1. Almost always. I've only had 1 or 2 other things that sat up as number 1. And so I give him direction to go home. I want him to go home in a quiet automobile. If he hadn't got a place home he can go, he can stay wherever we are. 1 hour. Take your book down from the shelf. I'm going to be told tomorrow that you put your book up on a shelf, shoulder high or higher, so you could take it down from the shelf. It's what it says. It's what you're going to do. Sit with God for an hour. You got a clock? An hour. I tell him I expect about half the time I get a phone call within the next 24 hours. runs right around half that. We just missed something. Will not mean you've done a poor job. It simply means call me. It happens. That's why you did the inventory. That's why you did the review. Don't worry about it. Do not worry about it. Do not beat yourself up. Yeah, Gary.
Scott, how do you prevent him from talking all day about the candy bar?
I start asking, I say, the first time when we come out of the prayer, I say, tell me right now the single worst thing you ever did. I want the worst one now.
Okay.
And I tell them when I did that. And we go all the way down.
Can I make an observation?
Yeah, go for
The-
it.
What that does is by hitting the tough stuff right off the bat, as Scott says, avoids the long train of stories that are not nonsense. Because what happens is, I'll give my sponsor my first couple forceps. I'd give him a little small piece, and I would see how he react. Can he handle that piece? All right, I'll give him a little more. I'll give him, I'm back in charge of my recovery again. I'll give him a little more. I'll give him a little more. Oh, he didn't react right to that, so I'm definitely not going to tell him this, right? So when you cover the worst things you've done right off the bat, it just frees you up, and there's no need to tell long stories about stuff that's really not, that's not haunting you. And the other place in the book where it talks about it not being a reading of the fourth step is at the bottom of 73, the bottom of that first paragraph. It says, they had not learned enough humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. Well, my fourth step is not all my life story, right? I mean, it's my resentments, my fears, and it covers a lot of the mess. But there's two pieces I take about that. One is that, our job is to tell our story here. And the second piece is the all part. Because one of my character defects was I understood when they said you can't have any secrets, your only secrets are your secrets, and so I said, okay. But I would tell Dow 90% of my story, I would tell Barclay 90%, Ben 95%, and you maybe, Todd, you get about 75%. And my whole 100% would be covered, but nobody had the whole story. And there's such a huge difference when one man has the whole story. And there's only one definition for whole. All, every bit of it. When you, metaphorically speaking, when you can stand buck naked in front of another man, warts and all, this is me, and walk away with feeling more loved than when you got there, that's the goal. And something that Scott talked about that I've used and I've found to be so profound is just telling them there is stuff you've forgotten. Don't. I'm not going to think you've lied to me or consciously left it out. There's no question that we can't cover everything in 2 hours. So call me right away when it pops up, and we'll talk about it real quick, and we'll go on with our day. Make it okay. And if they did leave it out on purpose, I mean, I know that didn't happen to any of you guys ever leave anything out on purpose, but if it did, it gives them the ability to come back without the guilt, shame, and confession of being a liar.
Thank you. So when he finishes, I ask him a series of questions. Have you done physical damage to a human or an animal? And I don't mean a fist fight on the schoolyard. I mean, have you hurt anybody? Have you had a homosexual experience? Even if I've heard that, I ask again. Have you had sex with an animal or a family member? Have you been involved in an abortion? Was there anything you decided not to tell me or you weren't sure that I haven't already heard? I ask him those questions. And then I tell him, I read him the fifth step promises, and I tell him, I forgive you. And I believe God forgives you. And I believe by the time you finish your ninth step, you will have forgiven yourself. If you're new, don't start looking for self-forgiveness. It isn't time. That comes when you complete those amends. That's where that comes from. We're going to cover that. And then so it asks metaphorically, you want to do this next part?
What are you talking about?
I don't know. It's in this book somewhere.
Not a five-step program?
The returning home in 6 and 7.
Oh, no, go for it. Go for
All
it.
right. So we sent him home, and metaphorically, in that bottom of 75, we asked, were you thorough? Top of 76. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. So apparently, step 5 and 6 are taken the same day at the end of that hour. And if you're not willing, there's a prayer here. There's a 6-step prayer. And then when you're ready, you say that 7-step prayer, and we're on 8 tomorrow. On 8 tomorrow. I would make an observation on the 7-step prayer. As I read the step on the wall, it looks like I'm asking God to take it all. In the 7-step prayer, that's not so. Pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Not ask him to take them all. And my fourth sponsor is one of the most spiritual men I will ever know, I would guess. And he told me that there's nothing in the book that talks about you working on your character defects. That implies that your life's manageable, and somehow we don't think so. So we don't need you to be working on your character defects. I've got 3 particular character defects I call my spiritual barometers, and they are lying, improving the truth, actually. Yeah, no, these 3 particular ones, yeah. Lying, swearing, and being angry in traffic. And if I notice one of those, if I look, they're all about, they travel together. And they're what tell me there's something wrong with my spiritual program. If one of those is happening, I look, they're all happening, and there's something wrong with my spiritual program. So my answer isn't to work on my character defect. My answer is to review my spiritual program over the last week or so. Where's the hole? What's morning prayer and meditation look like? How much spiritual literature have you read? What's your meeting count? When's the last time you talk to your sponsor? Did you tell them the whole truth? What's your sponsorship look like? Are you letting them in traffic? Are you trying to where's the hole? For me, the hole is normally morning meditation. That works so well for me that I stopped doing it. I know that made sense. I know that made perfect sense to you. And so I plugged that hole, and 2 days later, you cut me off in traffic and almost hit me. And I will smile at you. It'll be a genuine smile. And I'll wave all of the fingers at the very same time. And I'll say, wow, God, thank you that I smelled he might cut me off. I had a foot on the brake, and I avoided a wreck that would have been his fault, but I'd have been in a wreck. Thank you. And go with that child today, please. Looks like he could use some help, and I make mistakes like that myself. And I can't change myself from the raving maniac 3 days ago. And what that sponsor said to me was, don't focus on the darkness. Invite the light in. And the light will come and the darkness will flee, because the darkness cannot exist in the light. So whatever my problem is, my answer is to get closer to God. And the best way for me to do that most of the time is to try to look for a way to try to help you.
So, I'm sorry, Scott, to ask these stupid questions, but, so instead of working it, you're reviewing.
Yeah.
When all these people say, well, I'm working on it, they're really just reviewing it, right?
Well, I don't speak for them, but yeah, I don't think I can work on them. I don't think I can. And I think I'm going to tell the story of my first 6 and 7 step, if that's okay. I had one of the big white light experiences while I was in treatment. I've never heard anybody talk about a bigger one than the one that I had. I was in the Master's presence, and I received the forgiveness for killing that child, which is what my soul screamed for and got. And I completed this treatment center, had this alleged 4th step. That's what I'm going to call it. It was multiple choice, fill in the blanks, true, false, do you still hate your mother kind of stuff. And I called down to the treatment center, and I did a real 5th step. I told this guy the whole truth. And a week or so later, I'm still unsponsored. And I'm laying in bed. My first wife's asleep next to me. And I'm laying there in God's presence. I'm just chatting with him like I'm chatting with you. That capital F friend thing has been real for me for a very long time. And I'm laying there in his presence. It's like I'm floating in his love, and it's surrounding me. And I have this phenomenally deep, there simply aren't words sometimes for things that are happening on the spiritual plane. That's the best I can do with that. I was so in his presence. I was so overwhelmed by his love, how much he loved me, how much he wanted the best for me. And I said to him, please, give me the hardest treatment I can, training I can stand, and make the most out of me that you can. And that was step 6 and 7. I will tell you the truth, gentlemen, there have been times I wish I hadn't done that. Some of this training has been pretty tough. And yet I sit before you able to say that prayer. Give me the hardest training I can stand. Make the most out of me that you can. I become convinced God's will is not a good deal. It is the very best deal there is. And that includes some of this training, which has been pretty tough. It's been pretty tough. Sometimes I think maybe I was singled out. I don't know why. I'm not interested in why. My sponsor erased the word why from my vocabulary 40 years ago. I've never asked why when I was looking for an answer. When I ask why, I'm looking for somebody I can argue with, manipulate, change, or fight. Never looking for an answer. And he said, why is a management question? The first step says you ain't in management. So all the why questions have the same answer. The answer is you don't need to know. And I hated that when he told it to me the first time. And today I'm embraced it. It's one of my cornerstones. I thought it was not knowing that made me crazy. Incorrect. It was needing to know that was making me crazy. When I lay down the need to know, I get peaceful. From a position of peace, I begin to know. But the knowing isn't worth anywhere near as much as the peace. Who's up?
I kind of want to talk a little bit. I want to go back to the fifth step for a minute,
Yeah.
okay?
Did you miss something?
I did the fifth step. Just the way that I do a fifth step with the guy is very, very similar to what you guys do. I mean, we sit down, I pray. And it says in here, it says we are prepared for a long talk, right? It doesn't say we're prepared for you to read me your 18 sheets of paper, right? And honestly, the first fifth step I ever did was that. I read my inventory to my sponsor, and it took forever, and it took forever. It took forever. But when I do one today, what I do is I pray, and I get out a notebook, and I get permission to do this. I say, look, I'm just going to write down some things as they come to me. I participate in active listening. I'm actively listening, right? And I write, if something comes to me, I write it down. And I let him know at the very beginning, I'm only writing these things down because I'm looking for some common themes here. And then at the end of the deal, I give that sheet of paper to him. I'm not gonna keep it. What he does with it, I don't want him to go show it to his wife. But I mean, it's like I let him know that this is not. I'm keeping tabs because when I got here, I had a big check mark taking God, right? I ask those same 5 questions. Honestly, when you start out with just tell me the worst thing on your list. Tell me those 2 things. When you started your 30-minute sessions going through your 4-step, tell me those things. What are those things that you reminded yourself of? And it's not about going fast. That's not what it's about at all. But it's about breaking through those sometimes decades of lies that I've been telling me, and I'm never going to tell anybody this, So I'm just echoing kind of what you guys said.
Thanks. I'm going to jump into 6 and 7 some. I agree with Scott that we need to be writing an 8-step pretty quickly after we finished our 5th step. So the stuff I'm going to share with you about 6 and 7 are just kind of some observations that I've had in hindsight. My hindsight's pretty good. The future is not very good, but future sight's not very good. These aren't things that I do in 6 and 7. They're just kind of observations about 6 and 7. I think 3, 7, and 11 are just all different layers of surrender, different depths of surrender. And if I'm not ready after having done a solid 5th step to go on with 6 and 7, I'm never going to be ready, right? I mean, the pile of rubble is still smoldering. I've been vulnerable. I've shared that with another man. I'm as open as I can be. And in the next very short period of window, whatever that is, till the ego can rebuild itself, which happens to me rather quickly, that's my window of opportunity, right? I only have 2 problems with the 6th step. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. If it said we were partially ready to have God remove most of these things, I'm in. It's the entirely and all part. And it goes back to that kind of old idea of, can we do like the 99% God deal and 1% John deal? Like if I let go of all these character defects, what am I really going to be? Am I going to be passing out roses at the airport, handing out pamphlets in the corner in Washington D.C. You know, like the Jehovah. I'm not criticizing, but like, you know, what does that really mean to be? And of course, you know, I don't think we ever get completely free of them. This is just about our mindset, right? We're now as willing as we ever have been in the past. I heard one time this guy say, yeah, my sponsor said I couldn't go on with my 8-step until I got my character defects under control. And I swear to you, I thought lightning hit the building. I mean, it was a scary moment, you know. In 12 and 12, Bill references, he uses the word sin and in reference to character defects and shortcomings. And I read a definition somewhere that I wrote down. I don't know where it came from. It's not in a religious context, but this guy said that sin is simply something that doesn't work. It's a self-defeating behavior. It's something that separates me from God. And for me, these character defects and shortcomings are just my emergency responses to life that I couldn't handle. Right? And I brought them from childhood, and I brought them into adulthood and wore them out until they just absolutely became so faulty that I either had to put them down, you know, or ruin my life. And I think what happens is, you know, for me, it's been one little piece at a time. These character defects have not been removed from me, as you've probably figured out in the last 24 hours together. But if I go on with the rest of the steps, I outgrow the need for them. If I make amends to everybody that I need to, that I can, if I continue in 10 and 11 and 12, you know, those are not maintenance steps. Those are growth steps. If I continue to stay transparent, you know, I'm free of this resentment, majority of the resentment, and when it does pop up, I'm cleaning it up in 10. If I continue to be a seeker and I continue to carry the message, I don't have a need for dishonesty. I don't have a need as great of a need for fear, you know. I can look the world in the eye. I can answer the telephone. I can open my mail. You know, that's big boy stuff. So for me, it's really about just becoming the right size and changing my mindset and going to a new level of surrender. You know, one thing I kind of learned during this process was that, you know, a lot of times the lesson's not about me that I'm involved in. I'm involved in someone else's lesson. You know, when somebody else offends me or there's an issue going on, you know, it's just not about me. You know, that's kind of been my battle cry recently. What I found in these observations in the 7-step is I have to surrender 4 things. And this list keeps growing. I think it's probably 5 or 6 now. But the most important thing I had to surrender was this need to be right. And I think if we honestly examine our life, we all have that to some degree. It's just satisfying to be right. You know, it just is to some silly degree. And I'll give you a couple areas where examples where that bottomed out for me. My son was becoming a Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouts, and he was when the very last stage of that is doing a community service project, and he was dragging his feet because he's getting to be almost a young man at this stage, and my wife's cracking the whip on him. I mean, they should have given her the award, not him. But so he we're after him. Hey, look, figure out a service project, get it approved, and I'll help you. I want to be a part of it. I want to do it together. You know. Hearing Ben's story about his son made me think this. I love my son like Ben, like we all love our sons, and so he picked a weekend at the very last minute, like his father would, to do this service project, and it happened to be one of the most important weekends of the year for me, which is this Laughing Buddhist retreat that we do. And I said, buddy, I've already planned it. I've got a plan that weekend. I bought my plane tickets. I paid my dues. I go to this retreat every year. The world doesn't change their plans because of your poor scheduling, your poor ability to plan. And he understood that. He's like, Dad, I get that. I don't expect you to change your plans. You're right. You're right. And I was like, yeah, I'm right. And so I fly out to Tennessee and I go to this men's retreat, and I found myself, during the break, just kind of crying like a schoolgirl because I want to be at home with my son. But I was right, goddammit. Excuse the language. But I was right, you know. I mean, there's nothing more, and today it's really, its futility has become more and more obvious to me every day. And if you don't think you have the need to be right, ask someone to review your Facebook post. Or engage in a politics conversation with 15 minutes with somebody on the other side. See if you have a need to be right. Not this weekend. On the way home. On the way home. So this need to be right is the first thing. The second one is this, and what's dangerous about the need to be right is that turns into the need to punish. I'm going to remind me to come back to that. The second one is this need to be powerful. You know, things got to be done my way. You know, how do you behave in your home group conscience? You know, do you care if the chairs face this way or face that way? You know, are you gracious when the group decides we're going to make coffee at 7:45, not 8 o'clock? You know, when things don't go your way, are you bent out of shape about that? Do you think about it more than once? You know, when you get that first sponsee and you tell him, call me every day for a week, and he doesn't call you, how's that sit with you? I told him to call me every day, John. Really? You know. The other one is the need to be effective. I don't know if you've ever taken a meeting into a jail or a prison that didn't want you. I one time, this guy asked me to come down to the Salvation Army, which has a religious program, and he was trying to bring AA back there. And they brought me in this auditorium to speak. Podium, suit and tie, microphone, the whole bit. Chairs for 600. And there's 5 guys. And they're in the back, and they're on their phones the whole time, and they do not care. They just, I don't know if they fell in the wrong room or someone was mad at them and made them come. And it was the worst AA talk I've ever gave. I felt like it was just awful, right? And I talked it through with Scott afterwards on the way home the next day, and I was like, you know, I have this need when I'm talking for you guys to shake your head, you know. It doesn't drive me, right? Like, I don't have a sick need for that, but like, you know, the opposite of that is painful, you know, and whether it's a sponsee going back out or not doing things your way, you know, the not being okay with failure is the need to be effective. And the last one is the need to possess. Like, I believe that everything is God's. I don't own a thing. The title might be in my name. You know, my wife is not mine. My kids aren't mine. The car is not mine. It's all God's. And that's a tough lesson to learn. But when you can get there, it's really freeing. It's really freeing that nothing is yours, even this body, right? We just given this body and a spirit we get to roll for 25 years, 45 years, 75 years, 105 years. Right. The need, and I'm going to circle back to that need to be punished is, Scott mentioned last night, have you ever had an occasion where a great truth just jumped out of your mouth, you don't know where it came from, and it had to have been God speaking through you, or a gift from God at least, and that happened to me. I was at this restaurant with my old business partner that we used to go to, and business was booming, and we like to spend too much money at this fancy lunch place 6 or 7 days a week, and so we would sit at the bar because it was faster, and the service was awful this day. A new girl, I think she was in the wrong spot, but I mean everything from start to finish. You know, typically you come down, they put down a white tablecloth in front of you, knife, fork, they start pouring you water, they bring the whole procedure was screwed, and so we were both a little annoyed, you know, and they also kind of know what appetizers we like, and they usually start them. But I'm not holding that against her, you know, because she's a new girl, whatever. And she asks us for our drinks, and we don't see her for, you know, what seems like eternity. She brings us back the wrong drinks. We order our meal. He gets the wrong meal. Mine's cold. You know, just disaster of a meal. Everything from start to finish. And by the time we're done, I'm pretty irritated. You know, I'm not gonna like cuss her out or anything. You know, I've had enough of a spiritual awakening where I can try to be graceful and say she's just having a bad day, you know, whatever it is. So the bill comes, and it was like $125 or something like that. I don't know what it was. About $100. story keeps getting bigger. In a couple of years, it'll be $1,000. But it was a lot of money for lunch. It was $100 or something, you know. And I always paid the bill, me and my partner, because I took care of the finances. And the bill came and gave her the credit card and came back. And in this moment of my first desire was to punish. 0 is the tip, right, Jerome? You're not getting. That's the desire. Let me. In case she doesn't know how much she sucks, let me help her understand that. Community service work, if you don't recognize that. And I had this brief flash. It was like, well, I had a decision to make, whether I wanted to extend some hate or to extend some love. And I doubled the bill. I gave her a $125 tip. We walked away. And we got in the car, and my partner said, "Did you really do that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you know, what were you thinking?" And I said, "Tony, I've been over-tipped for bad service my entire life. And if you're sitting in this room, I submit to you, you've been over-tipped for bad service your entire life, you know." And so that need to be right is such a dangerous thing. It's probably 5 different things I'm talking about. That need to punish, but that need to punish cannot exist without being right first, you know. And what happened to me in 5, being honest with another man, and doing 5th steps with other men, you know, a 5th step is not a one-way thing. Richard Rohr describes it as we have to learn to welcome our own wounds, our own brokenness. Because if I don't learn to welcome my own wounds and my own brokenness, I will have contempt for yours. That's a powerful statement, and it is true. It is true. And if I have contempt for your brokenness, I can't be of service to you, and I can't be at unity with you. And if I'm not at unity with you, we can't have kinship together. I think fellowship is the most understated word. We have a kinship in here, right? The men in my life, I've told you my military experience. However, if we were going to battle, I would choose the men in my fellowship, my network, the men in my life, you know. This is a battle. This is a spiritual battle I'm going to have the rest of my life. And so I need to be unified with everybody. I don't know if you wanted to close something before we go forward, but
I got a Fritz quote, but I don't have to do it. Go ahead and close.
no, go ahead and do the Prince quote. Go ahead.
I just wanted to throw in that being effective, I don't know if you have ever tried to teach 25, 15-year-olds at 7:05 in the morning. Sorry, that's it.
Okay. I was serious about getting your picture made with the 4-step trophy. I got a funny thing I do. If you're interested, come see me. Don Pritz was one of my great teachers. And he said the alcoholic is like an electromagnet that's been dragged through the junkyard of life. All this nasty, jagged, rusty, sharp stuff stuck all over us. Through the process of the 12 steps, we get a hold of the power control on that electromagnet and turn it down, and those things fall away. And this beautiful guy you've always been, this guy God put you here to be, just kind of emerges. That's what happens. Thank you. We'll see you back here in about 11 minutes.